People opposed to all religious faith frequently attack Christianity in particular for belief in miracles as a way to ridicule and discredit Christians. Without fail, such attacks point out that centuries of scientific study of the natural universe has never indicated or revealed any reliable evidence of supernatural phenomena. For a believer, asserting an article of faith that the miracles attributed to Jesus are essentially true leads to have one's faith dismissed as superstition and fantasy. By supernatural phenomena, I refer to any perceived experience or event that our reasoned scientific understanding of the natural universe can't explain, or which actually tells us can't take place at all. Supernatural phenomena include miracles, magic, and various things frequently grouped within the occult. If we conceive what we now call the supernatural within a more expansive view of nature, we might find such phenomena belong to a richer, more nuanced sense of order in reality. In this edition of the Temporal Reverie, I want to talk about what some people call supernatural miracles and others call magic. By applying an approach used in physics to reconcile major theories that are presently incompatible, I hope to craft a narrative that reconciles the supernatural with scientific canon. I see miracles being essentially the same in their character as magic. Both claim to offer a means by which human consciousness can exert willful influence over the physical world, produce effects judged impossible according to scientific canon. To me, the distinction between miracles and magic amounts to differences in the vocabularies of different spiritual traditions. The Judeo-Christian tradition calls such occurrences miracles. They are called magic within the pagan traditions. At the same time, I consider miracles something quite different from manifestation. Manifestation results from a disciplined, repeated process of managing and focusing our thoughts. It has the effect of influencing patterns expressed in reality with the aim of improving the probability that the things we want will appear in our lives. Miracles alter the pattern of reality by harnessing a process that endlessly destroys, then creates the universe. Miracles arise from a singular moment of intention to establish very specific alterations that can affect reality instantaneously. Miracles are more than managing coincidences, as Wayne Dyer often describes manifestation. Miracles are inexplicable discontinuities in the moment-by-moment conditions of the universe. They change things precisely, sometimes radically. And according to Jesus, the means to produce miracles is found in all human beings, a birthright of the human consciousness that shapes us in the image and the likeness of our Creator. Not all spiritual traditions have deities, and not all traditions that contain deities claim physical incarnations of those deities. But in Christianity, we have a religion of a single, all-powerful God who incarnates into the human person of Jesus Christ. Jesus is a flesh and blood man who has had his consciousness fully opened to his divine nature and thereby granted access to divine knowledge. The ministry of Jesus is described in the 4 canonical Gospels that open the New Testament. In all 4 of these documents, the earliest of which was authored decades after the time of Jesus, we find multiple stories of Jesus performing supernatural miracles. The nature of these miracles is as varied as their accounts are plentiful: turning water into wine, calming stormy winds and waves, multiplying fishes and loaves, healing the deaf, blind, and lame, raising the dead, including resurrection from his own death. Christians who embrace the absolute truthfulness of biblical accounts and the literal reading of Scripture accept that Jesus performed all of the miracles attributed to him. This unquestioning perspective is a big part of why the conservative evangelical wing of Protestant Christianity sees itself at war with science. In their view, any discrepancy between Scripture and scientific canon arises from a desire on the part of the scientific community to undermine and destroy the Church. While neither is visible nor as vocal as their conservative counterparts, more progressive denominations in Christianity see things differently. They seek to reconcile their theology with scientific fact, an effort I applaud and endorse. I also seek harmony between reason and belief. If science and theology can be brought into union, the result can only be a good thing for Christianity in the long term. Literalists stridently reject any reconsideration of dogma that even slightly relents to assertions of scientific fact. The truth of history is that when the reasoning and evidence presented by science is solid, the Church inevitably adapts by revising its teaching. Whether the vocal literalists know this or not, if theology had never adapted to accommodate science, we would still believe the sun orbits the earth. These days, even the Pope accepts the validity of evolution. So not only is there room for theological compromise in order to accommodate the discoveries of science, the history of Christian theology provides multiple examples in which religious teaching changed because of science. The fact that Christianity has survived those revisions suggests it can endure keeping up with a more evolved human understanding, even if it does so reluctantly and belatedly. Liberal Christians are open to considering changes in theology that reflect scientific truth. However, that openness tempts some people to speak of the accounts of miracles performed by Jesus as something metaphorical and symbolic, and not testimony of actual events. It's a rather tempting position to take. After all, the easiest way to undercut the theological attack that science provides no basis for any of these miracles is to suppose that the miracles themselves aren't real. But perhaps even more intriguing than the idea that one man in the person of Jesus Christ was able to produce miracles is the idea that this ability is not at all unique to Jesus. In John chapter 14, Jesus says, "Truly, truly, I say to you, he who believes in me, the works that I do, he will do also, and greater works than these he will do." If the manner in which human beings are made in the image and likeness of God refers to our consciousness, then Jesus might be showing us through his example that the capacity for miracles is a divine birthright of consciousness, and therefore available to us. One of the long-standing matters of some debate between various segments of the Christian world is one of creed. In the early centuries of the Christian Church, different creeds were negotiated among church elders in an effort to define the set of beliefs shared by all Christians and which define Christianity. Two such statements are the Apostolic Creed and the Nicene Creed. While there are different revisions to both creeds found at different points in history, what is especially noteworthy about them is what they share in common. The Nicene Creed, drafted by the First Council of Nicaea in 325 AD, said that Jesus came down and was incarnate and was made man. He suffered, and on the third day he rose again, ascended into heaven. Here's what the same creed, revised in 381, said. He was crucified for us under Pontius Pilate, and suffered, and was buried, and the third day he rose again. And this translation of the Apostolic Creed says Jesus suffered under Pontius Pilate, was crucified, died, and was buried. He descended into hell. On the third day he rose again. While it would simplify the labor of harmonizing scientific canon with Christian theology to suggest the miracles attributed to Jesus are merely myth or legend to be swept under the rug in a theological housecleaning, such an effort leads to a crisis of faith. Among the central defining beliefs of the Christian faith is a unifying acceptance that Jesus Christ was killed by crucifixion, his body laid in a tomb, and then returned to life from the dead 3 days later. No matter how desirable it may be to make peace with science by denying the supernatural miracles of Jesus, there is one miracle you can't deny and still honestly claim to be a faithful Christian. If being a Christian means accepting as truth the death and resurrection of Christ, then there is at least one supernatural miracle that even the most determined Christian peacemaker can't dismiss. Once you accept as truth that Jesus Christ had the ability to return to life after being dead and buried for 3 days, what reason is there to deny any of the other miracles attributed to him? Christians looking for a way to resolve the apparent conflict between their theology and scientific canon on the subject of supernatural miracles need a better argument than one in which they throw in the towel on central articles of faith. Fortunately, I believe such a better argument exists. When most people speak about the laws of nature, they envision some single set of universal laws that scientists toil to find and explain so we can harness them to produce our technology. Certainly, science has a pronounced desire to articulate such a single set of laws. But doing as much even within the confines of physics has proven problematic for quite a number of years. Physicists hope a grand, unified theory of everything will resolve the otherwise intractable incompatibility of quantum theory and general relativity. String theory, which was briefly examined in an earlier episode, is one candidate for the grand unified theory of everything. But in the quest to find a single theoretical framework with one set of laws for the universe, might we have overlooked another possible explanation? Quantum theory and general relativity can only make meaningful predictions about the universe when applied to their respective scales. Perhaps this is not an error to be erased. Perhaps that situation reflects an intended feature of the universe. Perhaps the so-called laws of nature only apply meaningfully to the universe within a particular range of scale factors. Igor Pikovsky, a physicist at the University of Vienna, recently published a paper in Nature Physics to offer a mathematical case that the space-time warping effects of general relativity collapses any uncertainty in a quantum system. Such a theory is yet unproven by experimental evidence, but it seems to suggest that these incompatible pillars of theoretical physics only act as the dominant influence over the universe within a particular natural jurisdiction characterized by scale. I call such jurisdictions magnitudes of order. As far as science can say right now, the subatomic realm in which the principles and influences of quantum mechanics dominate is the smallest scale we have found. I call the layer of reality observed at the subatomic scale the quantum magnitude of order. At the magnitude or scale of the subatomic, the behavior of the universe is ordered by quantum mechanics. At ever-increasing degrees of scale, a size is reached at which the effects of quantum mechanics are cancelled or overwhelmed by other influences from the next larger magnitude of order. At the scale of our everyday common-sense experience, the laws of physics still conform quite faithfully to the laws of motion, laid down by Newton and others. At the magnitude or scale of everyday experience, the behavior of the universe is ordered by classical mechanics in what I call the classical magnitude of order. For degrees of scale that dwarf our everyday experience, we focus our attention outward to space and find our studies occupied with planets, stars, black holes, galaxies, nebula, and so on. This is the scale of reality that spans the cosmos. At this magnitude or scale, the behavior of the universe is ordered by general relativity. Relativity dominates at the cosmic magnitude of order. There may be other such distinct layers of scale in our universe, but the fact that we can identify at least 3 magnitudes of order, each dominated by distinct dynamics and sets of predictions, suggests there might be more such magnitudes of order. If there are, what dynamics and influences might determine the nature they express? Here, in the classical magnitude of order, we say that the universe exists within a 4-dimensional space-time that has 3 dimensions in space and 1 dimension in time. But string theory, which advocates hope to prove is the grand unified theory of everything, posits a larger number of dimensions in space-time than those we know. In truth, there isn't a single string theory. There are multiple string theories, each of which offers a different variation on the mathematical unification of relativity and quantum theory. Complex mathematical problems often have more than one correct solution, which is the case here. But mathematical correctness doesn't establish those mathematically satisfying solutions as the truth. One idea all these different versions of string theory have in common is that space-time has more than 4 dimensions. One variation of string theory postulates a 10-dimensional space-time that includes the 4 dimensions we know. Another variation requires 26 space-time dimensions. These additional dimensions are described as unimaginably tiny, curled around the dimensions we experience. All strings in string theory are identical, except for their pattern of vibration. The vibrations of these strings might oscillate in one or more of these heretofore unseen and untouchable dimensions. In that case, these strings, these tiny vibrating loops that make up all the stuff in the universe, are phenomena that vibrate and move in at least 10 dimensions of space-time, perhaps more than 10. Although these strings move in dimensions of space-time we can't experience, their 10-dimensional form produces an illusion we can observe in the 4-dimensional reality of the universe we experience. The different shapes these illusions can take become the things we know as electrons, photons, neutrinos, and all the other fundamental particles. Changing the vibrational pattern of any one of these strings, if you could, would appear to turn one kind of particle into another. What about dark matter and dark energy? These two purely theoretical counterparts of normal matter and energy affect the universe at the cosmic magnitude of order. Dark matter generates the necessary gravity that holds the mass of the universe together. Dark energy drives the expansion of the universe. One of the odd qualities of dark matter and dark energy is that we can't directly observe either one. Maybe the string vibrations corresponding to dark matter and dark energy take place entirely in the 8 or more additional space-time dimensions of string theory. Such vibrational patterns would account for why we can't see or touch either. String theory is currently unproven by experimental research and data, but if correct, it describes yet another magnitude of order, one that achieves its scale not by scaling up the 4 familiar space-time dimensions, but by adding at least 4 more spatial dimensions. Given such an exotic environment, we might anticipate that these strings behave according to presently unknown dynamics that express themselves in a different set of natural laws. One feature of string theory that seems of particular interest is its narrative of a larger reality in which vibrational changes could appear to reorganize matter and energy for what seems from our frame of reference to be no reason at all. The prospect of reality defined by more dimensions than we can experience should urge us to caution when passing judgment on phenomena that can't be described or explained in terms of prevailing scientific understanding. The manner by which a phenomenon seems to behave may not reveal the full nature of how it actually behaves. To see what I mean, let's look at shadows. In 1979, Douglas Hofstadter's groundbreaking book on the nature of cognition and thinking, Gödel, Escher, Bach, was published with this photograph on the front cover. While Hofstadter's text is a remarkable read, it's the photo on the cover that makes visually an important point I want to emphasize. In the photo, 2 carved wooden blocks are suspended from a string. Lights positioned to shine on those blocks at right angles to one another project shadows of those blocks on surfaces positioned nearby. From a purely spatial perspective, the blocks themselves are 3-dimensional physical objects. They occupy all 3 spatial dimensions we know in the classical magnitude of order. Still, these 3-dimensional blocks produce 2-dimensional shadows on the nearby surfaces. The blocks are carved into shapes so that the 2-dimensional shadows they project look like letters of the alphabet. If your perceptions of the universe were limited to just 2 spatial dimensions, you couldn't perceive the full reality of the blocks. What you could perceive are shadows projected by the blocks, sharing the same 2 dimensions as you. Such a 2-dimensional reality and the perceptions available to you in that reality are wonderfully explained in Edwin Abbott's book, Flatland. If you were a flatlander, your experience and perceptions would make the suggestion of a 3rd spatial dimension an unimaginable flight of fancy. Talk of blocks existing in a 3rd dimension would seem preposterous, much less talk that undercuts your sensory experience by claiming the 2-dimensional shape you perceive is an illusion projected into your perception by a 3D object. If our universe actually occupies more than the 4 dimensions we experience, we have to consider that the things we believe have an innate reality might be illusions projected into the 4 dimensions we experience, cast into that experience by something that has a 10-dimensional reality and shape. Everything we encounter in our living experience appears to have a 4-dimensional shape, exhibiting properties we can explain in terms of the forces and dynamics found in our 4-dimensional perception. But some things we might encounter can't be explained in terms we understand. A lack of understandable explanation doesn't invalidate the reality of things we can't explain. It might simply point to the possibility that their explanation can only be understood from a magnitude of order unavailable to our perceptions. We can't see the cause for these things, but nevertheless can see the shadow-like effect they project into our four-dimensional experience from a larger underlying reality. Seen from the perspective of different magnitudes of order, the emergence of seemingly conflicting laws of nature might not represent the need for a single, grand, unified theory of everything. Such distinctly identifiable and observable sets of natural laws might represent a design in which one set of forces and influences hold sway across one particular magnitude of order, but which fade or are overwhelmed by other forces and influences found within other magnitudes of order. Suppose that string theory is correct, and in the process describes the behavior of the universe at a stringy magnitude of order. Would that necessarily be the largest possible magnitude of order? Not if we want this concept for different sets of natural laws to eventually connect the physical universe to the domain of the divine. For that, we need one more magnitude of order, the divine magnitude of order. Of course, since the very notion of a divine magnitude of order is whole-cloth speculation, it's fair to ask why propose it at all. If you believe, as I do, that the entire universe arises from a background field of divine consciousness, and that space-time, matter, and energy are illusion fashioned out of consciousness itself, you might wonder how that kind of universe would work. Proposing a theory for how such a universe operates not only inspires further exploration, but gives you a basis for discussing and debating the possibilities with others. On its own, string theory unifies the phenomena of matter and energy in a common form, but falls short of providing a satisfying narrative that leads to the field of divine consciousness. To that end, I imagine this divine magnitude of order holds the background field of divine consciousness, which contains the physical universe, the kingdom of heaven and its entire population, the domain of hell and its population, and perhaps more. Like the other magnitudes of order, behavior of things in this layer of reality is governed by principles that could prove as bizarre and as counterintuitive as those of quantum theory. Events and phenomena in this layer of reality could produce effects that ripple into other magnitudes of order, casting shadows that materialize as something inexplicable. A pattern disturbance in the vibration of the divine mind could cast a shadow of itself into the 10-dimensional space-time of string theory. That shadow forms the illusion of strings in a particular vibrational pattern, and the strings themselves cast a shadow into the 4-dimensional space-time of our ordinary world, appearing as particles of matter or as some form of energy. All of this could be orderly and logical, a complete cascade of changes appearing in the pattern of the entire universe according to the forces and influences that shape the illusion of reality. Without a detailed understanding of all the magnitudes of order and how they interpenetrate to form the universe, observable phenomena manifesting in a particular magnitude of order might not appear in such a way as to offer a cause for its occurrence that science endorses. From our point of view, such bleed-over from other layers of reality could present itself to be observed as phenomena without cause or explanation according to science's understanding of the natural universe. Lacking scientific explanation, such phenomena are characterized as supernatural, providing religious detractors grounds to dismiss not only the phenomena, but also the faith that it contemplates them, including Christianity. Next time on the Temporal Reverie, I want to take a look at how the nature of a vibrational universe that is constantly being created would endure such endless demolition followed by endless recreation. Within the staggering complexity of the vibrational pattern that produces our entire physical universe, is there a single vibrational effect that collapses the whole universe into chaos, from which a new universe will arise? A universal heartbeat that constantly brings all we know back into being, right after destroying it all? If a divine magnitude of order exists, events arising within that layer of reality can propagate effects to other magnitudes of order to the extent their features allow. While the effects of such propagation can be described in terms that appear unnatural to our perceptions, Perhaps the supernatural arises from a super nature, one we have yet to discover, one we are no doubt ill prepared to fully comprehend. I'd like to know what you think of this episode. Please leave any questions or thoughts to share in the comments below. My thanks to God for this chance to share with all of you, and may the gifts of love, joy, peace, and enlightenment come to you all.